Welcome back again to the Coalition for Marriage YouTube channel. If you are joining us for the first time, it's a real privilege to have you along. We are the UK's largest pro-marriage organisation, representing tens of thousands of individuals and groups who support one man, one woman marriage. Yes, other things take place in society, as you will often hear me say, but marriage, we believe, describes a thing that only one man and one woman can do. And the evidence tends to support, not tends to, but overwhelmingly supports that as a matter of fact. And it's getting more and more difficult these days to stand up and speak up for those things. But some people are doing it, and they're finding when they do it that the law is on their side. And a key example of that is the wonderful Reverend Keith Waters, who we've got today. First of all, Keith, would you like to say hello to our listeners and our viewers?
It's just great to be able to have this conversation, Tony. Thanks for inviting me.
Now, Keith, let me remind everyone, you are a Christian minister. Our supporters come from all faiths and none. Many atheists I'm engaged with on a regular basis, but our people support one man, one woman marriage as something special, unique, something that brings about the best version of the next generation and benefits society widely. And that's not to say that sometimes marriages don't work. Sometimes they break down, abuse, adultery, abandonment, single parents doing the best job they can, etc. Wonderful people stepping in and adopting children when their homes have broken down. All those things, yes, take place and are great, but the evidence says that growing up with your married biological mother and father brings about the best life chances on the whole. And that's something we need to promote, and something I know that you believe and speak about regularly in society. I mean, it's great to talk to you, Keith. Now, as I understand the stand you've taken, first of all, you gave up a well-paid job for one of the top Cambridge colleges in order to be a full-time minister. And let's put that out there again. You know, we do have supporters from all faiths and none. Coalition for Marriage, whether or not we're Christians, we approach the arguments around man-woman marriage from an evidence base, a statistical evidence base. But you are a minister of the Christian religion, and you gave up a well-paid job to go and do that, but you had to work on the side in order to subsidise what you were doing. Fine. But then the two things collided. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what happened?
Yeah, I'd taken a job as a school caretaker, which was, it seemed a good fit. It was a new school, local to our area, local to our church. Great way of being involved in the community as well as helping to pay the bills. We had planted a church around about 6 or 7 years before, and I'd been attempting to supposedly work part-time, but part-time doesn't kind of work in the job that I was doing. It was pretty full on. And so come to the conclusion that we needed to go make this break, put more time into the ministry, and also ensure that we could pay the bills. So happily employed by a local school who, I have to say, when they employed me, were very clear. They really didn't want any kind of Christian nonsense. But yeah, that was pretty much it. You know, okay, well, we know you're a vicar. We don't want you doing this kind of stuff. So yeah, my answer was, well, yeah, I'm here to do the job you put before me. I'm happy to do that. Within the first week, I was asked to take assemblies. I was asked to take some RE lessons. I was asked to help with difficult children, counselling staff, that kind of stuff. Kind of just,
but no Christian nonsense.
But no Christian nonsense. Yeah.
So taken on as a caretaker, but could you do assemblies? Could you do RE lessons?
Yeah. So it was good. I get it. It was a nice surprise. I shouldn't be surprised. You know, I'm a Christian. I should expect the Lord to lead me into these things, but it was good. We had a good relationship. I had a great relationship with all those in the school, parents, and the children. So it was very good. The issue came in June. I'm having to think back when. It's such a long time now, but it was just before June 2019 when I put out a tweet. Now, the background to this tweet is that within our church, we've been discussing how we could reach out to the whole community. We wanted to make sure that we were not missing out on those who were attracted to those of the other sex, of the same sex. And so we'd had discussions, and a number of people said, well, shouldn't we go along to the Pride events and be encouraging and tell them about Jesus? And my answer was no. How do you feel if a whole group of people turn up on a Sunday morning and start telling us that same-sex marriage is a great thing, and we're stepping on their toes. Yes, we need to reach these people. Don't do that. Somebody else said, well, how about I take my children along? We just hand out a few leaflets. No, just don't take your children anywhere near it. So we'd had those discussions. And so the day before, the great Pride events were about to start launching, supposedly for Pride Month, with I think Pride Month goes on for about 12 months these days, but it was, it's one of those things. I put out a tweet which basically said, Pride isn't appropriate for Christians. It's not the right place for us to be, and it's particularly harmful for children. Within a few seconds, the local newspaper editor, who unbeknown to me was a great supporter of Pride, decided to contact on Facebook and Twitter a local councillor who, with her wife, were great advocates for Pride, and so they started the process of lift up what I had said, twist it, and the mob was born. Now, the next day, it was a Saturday, I put out the tweet. The next morning, I had another newspaper editor on the phone before I got out anywhere near church. Wouldn't speak to them, so they turned up at church, and it kind of went on from there.
Yep.
I turned up on the following Monday for the work at school, and was faced with the kind of horror of the head teacher saying, "Well, what have you been doing over the weekend? It's all dreadful." So I just being me, and brushed it off, carried on. But within a couple of days, the trust who managed the school had decided I was bringing the school into disrepute. Took me along the disciplinary route. But the upshot was that I could see where it was heading. I knew where it was heading. I got a lot of other stuff going on in life. And so the mental and kind of capacity to deal with this meant that I had decided I was going to resign, but continue to see the disciplinary process through, because doing that would prove one way or another whether I was right to have resigned. So the disciplinary process ended up with a final written warning saying that if I ever dare use my own personal social media accounts and say things which the school don't like, again, I'll be out of a job. So obviously I'm going to do that, because the school isn't going to like what I've been saying for many years and continue to say. Alongside that, of course, Christian Concern, great organisation, have been supporting personally since they appeared. So we were familiar with them, been supporting them. As a church, we supported them. Somebody phoned up and said, I think you might need some help. I said, don't be ridiculous, it'll all be fine. This was within the first couple of days. A couple of days later, I did call back and say, no, you're right, I probably do.
Actually, I do.
Yes. Yeah, thanks very much. And great team of people, doing a wonderful work. The Christian Legal Centre backed me to take this to a tribunal. We put every possible thing that we could lay on the line, really, to the tribunal, and we won on indirect discrimination. But the process, of course, it's interesting, pretty bruising along the way. It was the mob that was more of a problem than anything else in reality, because a family, I'm pretty thick-skinned. I just kind of get on with it. But when you have funeral directors turning up at your home trying to arrange a funeral, and people trying to knock you off your bike and that kind of stuff, it gets a bit difficult for the family.
Yeah, and this is the thing, isn't it, Keith? That I mean, we talk about these things, and I talk about these things with people regularly, but the pain of going through this is quite something, and it's quite interesting, because on the one hand, we're in an environment where we're told we're going to tolerate and accept and and, be nice, but then actually only if you say the right things, because if you say the wrong things, we will not tolerate, we will not accept, and we certainly won't be nice. In fact, we'll be the opposite of those things, and we will go and get our friends, and we will make your life awful. And that's what you experienced, and we will do our best to hound you out of society, to hound you out of your job, and to shut you down. And you experienced that, and all because, again, in your opinion, you were saying these pride events where men are, walking around kind of half naked, often with genitals hanging out, mimicking sexual acts, if not actually participating in sexual acts. These are no places for children to be taken to at all.
Absolutely.
And in many cases should be shut down by the police because of what's happening in broad daylight, which is just, wrong, really. But for whatever reason, they choose not to do that. And in fact, some cases choose to join in and wear armbands and march alongside, So all you were doing was saying, actually, I don't think it's a good idea for you to take your kids along. And just for voicing your opinion. And I'm interested because you've raised a load of really fascinating things there. The idea that you were saying to your people, look, it perhaps isn't right for you to go along there and to join in their march and criticize them for what they're doing. Mm-hmm. Actually, that might not be the kind and polite thing to do, but to give them the Christian message in another setting, let's say, or invite them along. That actually seems like a very reasonable and thoughtful approach.
Well, I thought so at the time. Yeah. But it seems not. It's interesting you mentioned the police as well, because I was invited along soon after by the local police to a meeting with the local council and the police, so that I could be kind and gentle to those who apparently I'd abused and make great apologies and be retrained in my thinking. Now, I didn't realise that was the police's role at the time. It seemed quite an interesting thing. But the whole point of the pride issue is it's wrecking the family unit. The marriage issue is really central, and so when we found ourselves in a situation where it was possible civilly for two men or two women to marry, that's where the whole thing kind of exploded. That was a massive catalyst to the aggression, and it is aggression, which is thrown against those who would stand for traditional values from whatever faith or none. And a number of the people who came, I had lots of people wanting to support me, but not one publicly. Not one local church would support me publicly. Lots of churches across the land did, but locally it was very liberal. Yeah,
and again, we perhaps need to unpick some of these issues. So the marriage thing. The reason why, so from a secular evidence base, and we'll move on to the church view in a moment, but from a secular evidence base, the research is quite clear that growing up with your married biological mum and dad gives you the very best start in life, bar none, on a population basis, right? Now, of course, we accept there will be cases on opposite sides that don't work and do work, but on a population basis, it's quite clear that your mental health, your physical health, your educational outcome, your financial outcome, your propensity to not be involved in the criminal justice system, to not get pregnant before you're 19, all sorts of things, you do so much better. And of course, we understand that sometimes marriages don't work, abuse, abandonment, adultery, single parents, of course, do as best as they can. I come from a single parent background. I think it's wrong for us to say all single parents do a great job, because that's, actually, it's just not the case. Some do a great job and some don't. Just like, married parents, some do a great job. But from a numerical point of view, from a statistical point of view, growing up with your biological mum and dad in a married relationship, not even a cohabiting relationship, the stats are quite clear. Yep, it's this thing about marriage. And so when, as a society, we dilute that definition, as you say, and we actually include other things that look a bit like that but aren't that, it undermines the whole thing. And I often use the analogy, it's like salt. If you redefine salt to include things that look a bit like it, whether it be sugar or baby powder or heroin, actually salt is precious because of what sodium and chlorine do when they bind together. Yep. And that's not phobic to any other chemical or compound. It just is what it is. And if you redefine that, you get confusion everywhere. And what do we find? We've redefined marriage. We've taken out gender. It doesn't matter. And we get confusion everywhere, And that's not to say that in a liberal democracy, Keith, people who are same-sex attracted, fine, live the way you want to live in your private lives. In a liberal democracy, whatever, that's another conversation. But it's not marriage. It's not the thing which only one man and one woman can do. And if we redefine that, we mess up everything. And what do we find? Marriage rates have dropped through the floor. Kids are being born outside of marriage. If you look at what's going on in the schools, in terms of the number of kids who have got psychological issues these days and are disturbing the classes, and teaching is being much harder than it ever was for everyone, for the teachers, for the students. I don't know, the whole thing seems to be, and that's outside of, okay, well, the church has a view on marriage, which I actually subscribe to as a Christian, and you do as well. And perhaps we can look at that as a separate issue, because you're not saying same-sex attracted people aren't welcome in your church, are you?
Absolutely not. And again, if you want to look at the statistics, we will have same-sex attracted people within our church. There are some great organizations, Christian organizations, who support wonderfully same-sex attracted people who have found that their life is in Christ. It's not in identifying as this, that, or the other. It is identifying with Christ. We in our previous church, we had a regular visitor who was actually transgender. Now, that person was welcomed and encouraged, and that's what we would do. People's we're all sinners saved by grace. That's the fact of Christianity. If you're in Christ, you're still a sinner, but you're saved by grace. We need to recognise that we all need that saving, that help. So absolutely everybody's welcome. But the interesting thing about marriage is that the whole of the basis of family is built around marriage. You start in Genesis,
and it's quite interesting because there are those who lobby me regularly, if you like, and say actually, we should be arguing for another term which describes what only one man and one woman can do when they commit to spend their lives together. Yep. Because, in a monogamous voluntary union for life of one man and one woman to the exclusion of all others, that's a unique thing which brings about unique results that nothing else can replicate. And maybe, there are people regularly, I get people saying, we need another term to describe that because the marriage one's been taken.
Well, let's reclaim the marriage one, shall we?
Yeah, well, whatever. Something needs to, only because these things change society's opinion. And when you look at the stats, and this is the really sad aspect of this, the people who are coming up with the rhetoric, the elites or whoever you want to call them, they're marrying in high numbers still. And they're enjoying the benefits that marriage brings. And also they've actually got lots of money anyway. So if things don't work out, well, they can pad it round with cash to kind of add the extra support needed, etc., etc. When kids fall through the nets educationally, whatever, because of the sadness of divorce, let's throw some money at it. But it's the less well-off families who are suffering the most, because they're the ones who are suffering the impact of much greater drop-offs in marriage rates. And kids being born outside of marriage. And it's those lower income families who could really do with the benefits that marriage brings in terms of, two people running a home, doing it much more efficiently than one person can, for example. And it's the poorer parts of society who are really, really suffering, who could do with the benefits and are actually suffering kind of much more so than they were before. And I don't know, In terms of what's our way out of all this, Keith? I mean, you can't. Everyone says you can't go backwards. You can't go backwards. Well, whatever. How do we make progress?
How do we make progress? I think we make progress by raising the issue. And the Coalition for Marriage has been doing an incredible work on this all the way through, and needs to keep doing it, because we can't do it alone. We can't do it in any kind of isolation. We need to do it by bringing people along with us and showing them the truth. And statistics are very important in the modern world. And your approach of a very kind of numerical base, I think, is important in that. But from a moral point of view, I mean, I'm a Christian. I'm lead a church, and so you might expect me to say, well, the answer is going to be Jesus. And it's not a trite answer. It is bringing people back, not going backwards, bringing people back to the accountability that we all have. Yes, to God, but also to one another. Humanity, we talk about this, love is love. Well, love is love, but justice is justice. You need the whole gospel. What we're doing is saying everything is fine because I want it to be fine. So we do need to, we need to have we need a philosophical debate and a theological debate, and they need to run side by side. And we also, that if you look across the politics, and you look across kind of philosophical and journalistic stands, you'll find people even from the kind of very happily gay world who'll be saying, no, marriage is important. It is a different thing. And they're right. They've got it, at least that part of it. Certainly from a Christian base, we need to be praying, we need to be seeking God, and we need to be bold enough to stand up. And my biggest concern, I think, from my experience of taking this to the court, was that, first of all, within the school, there was a zero understanding, not just of what a Christian minister would do, but who a Christian is and what they believe. From the trustees, from the governors, from the head teacher, from the deputy head teacher. You then go into the courtroom, and surprise, surprise, the judge who is hearing the case doesn't understand what Christianity is, what a Christian believes, the basics of Christianity. And neither do the people on the other side. So you've got, it's a great opportunity to share the gospel. But it's one of those things, I think, if we do need to understand that we live in a very much kind of secular society. But that doesn't mean to say that people are not seeking the truth and needing. We know we need a decent morality, decent ethics, and a decent ethics it all comes back to that central family unit, to marriage.
I think what you're saying there is quite interesting, because there's just this innate lack of any kind of understanding of what Christianity brought to society. The idea of integrity, the idea of self-control, self-determination, self-accountability. Those things are missing in society, and it's almost like we need to reinvigorate them through the Christian teaching that brought them here in the first place, if you like. And there's more and more people who are identifying as cultural Christians, even though they don't have a faith, because they can see, oh yeah, that kind of makes sense to have this underlying lattice that stops society slipping through into oblivion, because it really is lacking. And you see the kind of nonsense that's happening on the streets, the videos that are all over the internet of just a complete lack of control, a complete lack of any kind of inhibition. And you think we've lost that underlying lattice, and we need to kind of get it back in place somehow, because therein lies stability for everyone, actually. And then the other thing is how we seem to be, we can't say or do anything if anyone is offended. And you think, well, actually,
Yes.
we need to be able to, first of all, the gospel is quite offensive. And the gospel, Christ is quite clear about that if it's quite, so we need to be able to find a way of saying, look, even though you're offended by it, we've got to be able to say in schools and in other places that growing up with your biological married mum and dad really is the best start in life. And that's what you should aim for your children, because it brings about the best outcomes. Yep. Now, if some people are offended by that, well, we're not saying it to offend you, because we know it doesn't always work, but actually most of the time it does. And we're happy to talk about, diet and weight and all those sorts of things without, worrying about offending people who don't want to live that way. But the more important aspects of relationships and life outcomes, we don't want to mention that.
Yeah, there is a sense in that we have moved over. Well, I guess probably only over the last 10 years or so. And prior to that, we probably in Christian circles we were saying, well, we need to be careful because persecution difficulties are coming. I was starting to say 10 years ago, actually, no, they're here, but they really are, because the difference is that we've moved from one state religion to another.
Oh, well, you're absolutely right.
The state religion we've moved to is, I don't like the word woke, but it kind of it's useful an umbrella, because it picks up on all of the kind of, let's be frightened about the climate, let's be frightened about upsetting people, let's be fearful. There is a lot of fear in the new state religion, and it seems to be the thing that drives it. And that's the big difficulty I think we have. We live in a world which is quite fearful now of everything, and fearful of upsetting somebody. Well, clearly we shouldn't go out to upset people, but we will be offensive.
And the difference with the new state religion,
in my disciplinary hearing, saying,
wow.
just to say, I probably wouldn't tweet some of this because I wouldn't want to deliberately offend unless I put some context around it.
Yeah.
But are you telling me that I can't say this because it's the Bible? You're telling me I can't use the Bible? I was actually told that I should be careful what I'm preaching in church. Yeah. I always am careful, but that's for other reasons. I'm careful to make sure I preach what's in God's word.
Yeah.
But I do think that the issue of the kind of feeling of there being a new state religion, it maybe sounds a bit too grand, but it's, in a sense, who do we worship? That's what it comes down to, or what do we worship?
Yet there's no, in this new state religion, there's no salvation, there's no repentance, there's no forgiveness available.
No, and there is an inordinate sense of chaos, and deliberately so, because if everybody can have whatever they want, there's a term for that. It's been around a long time. It's called anarchy, and it clearly is not something which will work. So, and there is a real. It tears the heart out of individuals, out of families, and society. So, a bringing back to the truth is so important.
And I think this is, so again, from a Christian perspective, I think there's a massive job for the churches to do, because they talk about the Great Commission, but actually everyone always talks about part A only, which is, preaching the gospel, but not part B, which says, and teaching them all the things I taught you. And the idea of being salt in society, which is reducing the rate of decay. And I think, if I might suggest, which you're doing, but other ministers need to do as well, is equip their people to actually teach society all the things that Jesus taught, and to be the salt which reduces the rate of decay. So instead of ignoring the culture, your job, your obligation, your primary purpose as part of the Great Commission is to influence that culture for good.
You've hit the nail on the head. And my biggest concern, certainly a couple of years back, I've still not found ways to do this, is to not just, there's a danger when one pastor says, well, pastors are not saying this, you're in danger of putting yourself on a pedestal. I'm really not doing that. I'm saying I've got to do it more, and others need to be doing. What is our job as a pastor? It is not to do everything. It is to enable, to equip those in our church families to be able to do exactly as you said, to know what they believe, why they believe it, to share it, to be salt and light, and the light is important as well. We've got to tell people when they're doing a good job, as well as when they're doing a bad job, and things are going well when they're not going well. We've got to do both of those. But we must, as pastors, we need to be equipping and standing up and being willing to put heads above parapets. I know that a number of the people who didn't support me didn't support me out of fear that it might offend people within their church. They might lose some people because they might lose the money from the people. I mean, there's all of the wrong stuff. We need to be bold enough and compassionate enough and wise enough all at the same time.
I get that. I mean, some people are scared of losing their livelihoods, and there are different views on this. Actually, if you're starting your career, some people would say, keep your head down, don't ruin your career right at the start and make yourself unemployable. Other people would say, well, if you start there, you'll never, and maybe the obligation is on those who are more financially secure to, speak their minds, etc., etc. But either way, I think, as you say, for pastors, Paul, the Apostle Paul, was a great sociologist. He understood what was going on around him in the culture, and he would refer to, the culture of the day, what was going on when he would speak to people. And I do think, I know pastors are so burdened with helping people and doing all sorts of things, and even filling in asylum applications and all sorts of stuff these days that they never would have been doing before. But nevertheless, there is that obligation to remain culturally aware and to speak into the culture when they're kind of, talking to their people, because therein lies, I'm sure, a significant part of the solution. What we do about the media and the politicians, whole other conversation. but
just imagine every pastor being culturally aware and culturally relevant. And the relevancy to our culture is what we have to share is so relevant. It's the most important thing that anybody could have to share.
Yeah, and it's the gasp of fresh air that everyone needs. Actually, they're desperate for it.
Yeah,
I get how hard it is, and people have got to put food on the table and all that sort of stuff, But those who can, in whatever way you can, if it's writing a letter, even if Keith, I say this so many times, even if it's grabbing 5 of your mates and joining a local political party and going along to the constituency events and letting your voice be heard instead of just the other voices. Because it's amazing how small a number of people makes a big difference in those kind of settings, And it's great to have another prayer meeting, or fantastic. But actually, if that's all we're going to do, we need to get involved. We need to be get involved in our local schools as governors. We need to be trustees of different organisations. That's what SALT is. If you can do it, maybe it's time for you to start doing it.
Yeah. Get involved, and have the prayer meeting. Pray about ways you'll be involved, and actually do it. So often we pray about things. Well, what should we do? We get the answer, but we won't do it. So go out there, do those things you suggest. I agree. And politics is an area where the need for prayer and support for Christians who are involved in politics is massive. As you say, the political realm is a whole new world, a whole other world. We haven't got time for it today. Except what we have got time to do is to really flag that need. We must support Christians in politics. We may have totally different political views. That's fine. If there's a Christian standing up in politics, we need to be behind them. We need to be praying for them. And we need to be praying for those politicians who we really find it difficult to like, who really come, we've got to pray for our enemies, but we must support the Christians in politics, because there are some really good people saying some really good things and getting in really deep trouble for it in politics.
And I just want to say, it does make a difference. I was in a meeting yesterday and somebody was saying, oh, what's the point? Nobody hears anything we say. And you think, hold on. I spoke, I don't know, over a year ago now to a lady called Claire Page, who was just annoyed. And this is a lady who, as far as I know, she's not a Christian, but she was annoyed that about what her school were teaching her children about all sorts of stuff, including the kind of gender nonsense. She complained to the school, she got brushed off. She wrote to the local authority, she got brushed off. She complained to the Department of Education, she got brushed off. She complained to the Information Commissioner, she got brushed off. She did not give in, and she just kept at it. Eventually, Miriam Cates and others took on her case, and then we hear in the Prime Minister's speech at the conference a couple of days ago, that parents should have a right to know what their children are being taught. And that came directly from the fuss that Claire made and the fact that this one little lady just refused to shut up.
Yeah.
Good for her.
Yeah.
You can make a difference.
Yes.
And that's a wonderful example of how a difference can be made by just one small voice saying, no, I'm not putting up with it. And you're one of those people. And, I want to thank you for just not being willing to think, oh, well, that's it. I'm stuffed now. No one's going to come to my church because I'm labelled as, oh, yeah, that vicar. I can't get a job again. You said no. And you gently and graciously said, well, actually, just like Paul, I appeal to Caesar. No, I have done nothing wrong. You're doing something wrong. And, for whatever reason, for the right reasons, the best reasons, I'm going to not give in to this. And well done. Can I just ask, so where are you with the school now? You obviously, I'm guessing you didn't go back to the school.
No.
But what's the relationship like there?
There is no relationship. The interesting thing was, before all of this kicked off, I was in the process of, we planted a church, as I mentioned earlier on. And the church was at the point where it was established. It was time for us to be moving on. So we're actually, before any of this happened, I was in the process of just seeking the Lord for where are we heading off to next. So in the middle of all of this, everything then kind of gets kicked off. So we're actually in South London now, not in Cambridgeshire, and just enjoying serving the Lord in church in Carshalton. So all going well. For the school, I pray that they have learned a lesson, not in a kind of patronizing kind of way.
You mean genuinely they've learned something?
I honestly do pray that they have learned the lesson that people must have the ability to be themselves, whoever that is. If I'm a homosexual, I want to be able to, outside of my school life, talk about things which are appropriately, mentioned on social media. I should be allowed to. If I'm a Christian, if I'm a Muslim, if I'm a Hindu, if I've got no belief at all or anything, I should be able to be myself. But the important thing for me really was that if I, as a pastor, could not say the things that I was saying and was being told, you shouldn't be preaching this, it might offend somebody, and that's just, you can have a listen if you really want to get to sleep at some point. Have a listen to my sermons; they're not that exciting.
We will put a link up to your sermons, Keith, so people can go and have a listen.
But it's being if I'm being told that, then how about the Christians who are working in admin in a school, those who are dinner ladies, those who are teaching? I'm married to a teacher. But those who are TAs in schools, they're in fear. There's still a lot of people think, I cannot say what I want. I can't be myself.
I know. Every person who stood like you, there are hundreds who have just been crushed into submission. And those people who are doing the crushing need to recognize that arrow could turn around and point at them one day.
Yeah.
So, what we're looking for is good for everyone, not just us.
It is.
A genuine democratic society where free speech prevails. Absolutely right.
Mm.
Good. Keith, such a privilege to talk to you. Thank you for all you did. Thank you for your stand. And I really hope that your ministry and your work is blessed mightily going forward. So thanks for your time today.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you for having me.